On today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 amazingly easy and affordable home decor DIYs using supplies from Dollar Tree. Each of these projects costs less than $5 to make, so let's get started. Dollar Tree has a variety of beautiful adhesive wall tiles, and for this project, I will be using this gorgeous blue and white tile. I'll also be using this Crafter Square round plywood. I'm going to trim the tile to fit nicely on the wood round. So first, I'm going to peel off the backing to expose the adhesive, and I place the wood round right on top. I trim off the excess tile with a utility knife. Now the adhesive on the tile is only attached and sealed on the outer end, so once I trim that out, the tile will separate. So I peel the adhesive off the wood and I attach the tile onto the wood using a multi-surface glue, but definitely use your preferred glue. I'm going to be using about 32 tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using 32 wooden cubes from Dollar Tree as well. First thing I need to do is to make sure that the cubes are all similar in height, since the wood round will be resting on top of them. I'm going to keep the blocks in their natural color, but you can certainly paint or stain them as well. Next, I'm going to glue a cube to one of the blocks, like so. As I mentioned earlier, the wood round will be resting on top of the cubes, which will not be visible. The cubes are just there to provide some support in gluing the blocks to the round. To glue the blocks, I start by placing 4 blocks around the wood round, positioning them opposite each other. Then I apply some glue on top of the cube to glue it in place. And then I glue the rest of the blocks, spacing them out evenly. Now I'm using wood glue, but you can certainly use hot glue as well. You can also add more blocks. The blocks are spaced out, but you can definitely fill in those gaps. And then I glue the rest of the blocks, spacing them out evenly. And this little tray is done. You can place little plants or anything decorative on top. I really love how this turned out. For the next DIY, I'm going to be making a planter box centerpiece. I'll be using about 40 tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree. I stained them in the shade Dark Walnut from Minwax, avoiding applying stain on the ends, which I will touch up later. Once that's dried, I glue 5 blocks together end to end, and I glue 4 sets of these. Then I glue 2 blocks together end to end, and I make 8 sets of that. This video is part of the 5 Under 5 DIY challenge, with the theme being Dollar Tree decor, hosted by Emily from Farm Charm Chic and Missy from Crafty Cove DIY, with guest host Annalee from Annalee Ashby DIY. I will have their channels linked below as well as the playlist for this challenge, so make sure to check that out for more 5 Under 5 DIYs from other amazing creators. To assemble the box, I'm going to form a rectangle with the glued blocks. I glue the ends of the longer blocks onto the end of a shorter block, like so. That way it's easier to glue the other end in place. And I make 2 sets of these. For the size of the blocks, I'm also going to be forming a little rectangle, gluing a single block on each end of the glued blocks of 2. But instead of gluing the other side in the same position, I'm going to lay it on its side like so. And this will just be a little added decorative detail for the side of the box. It's kind of like a handle. To fill in the sides, I'm going to be using some of these thick skewers that I have on hand. You can also use Dollar Tree skewers, which are a little bit thinner, or even some round dowels. So I measure that and I trim 5 for each long side. Now you don't want the sticks to go more than halfway the width of the blocks on each side. For the smaller side, I measure and trim as well, and I'll be gluing 3 on each side. I trim the sticks down with my miter shears, and then I paint them with some sample paint, which is similar to a white with hints of light gray. Now I always like to have the smoother side of the blocks showing, which is the side that's face down when gluing together. Not all blocks are equally cut, so the uneven side is where I'm going to glue the sticks so that I have a nice smooth front. I'm using wood glue from Dollar Tree, and I start gluing the middle stick first, and then I glue the ends, and then the remaining 2. And I do the same thing on the second rectangle. For the smaller rectangle, I glue 3 on each side like so. Now I'm going to glue the smaller rectangle on the outer end of the longer rectangle. So the box is going to be a bit narrower, but if you want it to be less narrow, then you can glue the sides in between the longer rectangles. And that will just extend that middle area a bit more. So I glue the sides together and then I clamp it a bit, giving the glue some time to dry. To make the base, I'm going to be using some popsicle sticks and a couple square dowels, but you can also use tumbling blocks in its place. I trim the popsicle sticks and the dowels to fit, and then I stain them with the same dark walnut stain. I glue them in place, and this DIY is done. For the next DIY, I'm going to be using another one of these adhesive wall tiles from Dollar Tree, and I'll be using the gray and white decorative tile. I'm going to be applying this onto this Dollar Tree cylinder vase. I'm not going to be covering the whole thing, so I trim out the section I want with a utility knife. I peel that part out because unfortunately that sticky adhesive does not come along with it. Now you don't have to paint it, you can leave it as is, but I do want it to have a matte texture, so I'm going to be painting over it with some white Waverly chalk paint. Then with a stencil brush, I lightly go over the raised area with some black acrylic paint, and I make sure to dab out any excess paint. And then finally, to soften it up, I lightly go over the black with some white chalk paint. Towards the bottom of the vase, I'm going to be gluing about 8 tumbling tower blocks. You can glue more or less, and I'm going to be staining them in the shade Dark Walnut from Minwax, which I do outdoors. To make sure the blocks don't budge, you can use a mixture of E6000 and hot glue. I'm just going to be using hot glue. You just want to make sure your vase is clean of any dirt or grease. So I glue the blocks around the vase, and I'm gluing them on the narrower side. Again with circles, I always like to start with 4, gluing them opposite each other, and then I go from there. For the wall tile, I'm just going to glue them together on the ends. I really don't need to apply glue on the vase, but I do use some tape to hold it down while I glue it. And this vase is done. I picked up this little textured vase from Dollar Tree, and I want to make a wooden stand for it. For this project, I'm going to be using about 24 tumbling tower blocks. I want the wood to be dark, so I'm going to stain in the shade Dark Walnut from Minwax, avoiding the ends, which I will touch up later. I start by gluing 2 blocks together end to end, and I'm going to make a total of 6 sets. Then I glue 3 blocks together end to end, and I make 4 sets. Next, I take 4 glued blocks of 2, and I'm going to glue them together to form a rectangle like so. I start by making a U shape or C shape, and then I glue the remaining side. For the glue blocks of 3, I glue 3 together, forming a U, and I make 2 of those. Then I apply some glue on the ends of the U-shaped box, and I turn that over and glue that on top of the rectangle on the shorter side like so. And I glue the other U the same way on the opposite side. For the base, there are a few alternatives. You can get one of those Dollar Tree planks and trim it down to fit with a miter box and saw, and have it rest on top of the blocks like so. Or you can have that go inside of the rectangle, gluing some tumbling blocks inside to hold it in place, or you can use some square dowels in place of the blocks. But I wanted a perfectly fitted base, since the rectangle base was a little bit narrower, so I trimmed down this Dollar Tree wood square for a perfect fit. And I just scored it several times with a utility knife. I stain it with the same dark walnut color, and I drop it in place, and this DIY is done. For the final DIY, I'm going to be using the small decorative hanging wall shelf from Dollar Tree. This comes in a pack of 2, and I'll be using one for this project. I'll also be using the rope and the ring that it came with, 8 tumbling tower blocks, and 4 small dowels. You can also use skewers or popsicle sticks. I'm going to apply some color using Waverly Antique Wax. I apply that with a damp cloth onto the shelf, and I want it to go on lightly. You can also use baby wipes or a damp paper towel or anything damp that will thin it out, or you can also add some water to the wax. I want the blocks to be darker, so I apply that with a dry cloth. For the dowels, I'm going to paint them with this metallic paint. This is titanium gold from Anita's Metallic Paint, which I got at Hobby Lobby. To assemble, I'm going to glue 2 blocks together to form an L, and then I glue those on the corners. Just make sure they're evenly placed because one side of the L is going to be thicker. I'm going to be placing 2 dowels on each side of the rectangle shelf, so I start with the longer side, measuring, marking, and then trimming down with my miter shears. To glue, I place a couple blocks on the bottom, and then I glue a dowel in place like so. And then I glue another on top of that, and I glue that right to the top, and I carefully clamp it to hold it in place. For a stronger hold, I would definitely avoid painting or waxing the areas that will be glued. For the smaller sides, I measure and trim those right after I glue the longer sides because I want them to fit snugly in between the ends of the longer dowels. I take the rope that it came with and I cut it in half, and I'm going to be looping each rope on the shorter sides. I apply some tape on one end of the rope, and I string that through an opening, and I just do one side each for now. I will be stringing through these beads, which I got at Dollar Tree. So I string through 10 on each rope, and then I secure that on the bottom. Then I slide the top loops inside the rings, and I space out the beads evenly, and this DIY is done. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel to stay updated on future videos. And don't forget to check out the playlist below. Until next time, bye!